Does he not see that we are on the doors of a third world war? Nuclear powers threatening one another every other day that they're going to blow up the planet. And the diseases and the plagues that are making the entire globe stand still. And the economy that's getting ready to collapse. If the Mahdi is not supposed to come now, then when is it that he is supposed to come? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الإمام المهدينا وسلم تسليما Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brother Ali Muhammad.
Walaikum assalam, my dear father.
Thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Yeah, today we're forced to be here, unfortunately, because we have to make a response video to this guy who's posing himself to be posing as some sort of scholar of religion. He's apparently an Egyptian man from his dialect. He has his name written on his plaque in front of him on the desk. He calls himself Dr. Amr Noureldeen, light of religion. And he seems to be a person who is from the Salafi school of thought. He's definitely at least a Sunni, from the way that he's cut his mustache there and left his beard long. And he's basically put out an attack piece on me and on the Dawah on his channel that has 1 million subscribers. And the video till now has about 180,000 views. And so let's listen to what this guy has to say, listen to his lies and respond, not for his sake, but for the sake of those 180,000 people who might not know any better, that are confused by his misperceptions that he's propagating.
الأغرب من ده إن مش بس العرب اللي عندهم مهدي، لا ده احنا عندنا مهدي كيوت لذيذ كده، طلع مهدي أوروبي ادعى أنه المهدي المنتظر، النساء كلهم قدام منه من غير حجاب، والصور المعلقة على الحيطة كلها نساء عاريات، وبيقول إن هو المهدي المنتظر. آدي يا سيدي اتفضل.
So he starts off by saying that now we have a European Mahdi that's popped out. He calls me sweet, he calls me cute. As if they're waiting for the Mahdi to be the ugly one. And so they keep repeating this phrase, the cute one, in order to kind of mock me in front of their people. And then he starts to attack the fact that there are women that are in the audience that are not wearing hijab, and he calls them, he calls them basically naked. Continue. Have a seat.
تفضلوا. معلش قبل ما يكمل بص كده حضرتك على الصورة وراه هتلاقي عسكري شايل رمح وبعد منه واحدة مديانة كتفها شعرها باين ومدية للناس كتفها عرض أزياء حضرتك.
Okay, so then he sits there and gives his little facial reactions while the people are sending their prayers and blessings upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. And then he says, he cuts me off and he says, before this guy even starts, let us look over here. What is this on the wall? And then he points out 2 paintings. He says, this one is a soldier, which is actually depicting Joshua, the son of Nun. And then he says, and who's this female here? Which is supposed to be a painting of Eliyasabat, the wife of the prophet Aaron, alayhi salam. And in their time, they weren't wearing hijab. And we already did an episode once again about hijab and how hijab has nothing to do with religion. It was never an obligatory part or commandment from God in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So if he wants to respond to a video, he should respond to that one. It was merely a sunnah as explained over there. And then he proceeds to call her like, what is it? What is she? Is she a model? No. Models are the women that your so-called Islamic governments are paying to act and perform and dance in all kinds of filth that they play over and over during the month of Ramadan every single year. They spend hundreds of millions of dollars paying so-called models to basically destroy the minds and the hearts and the souls of Muslims all throughout the world, while there's hundreds of millions of Muslims that are suffering. Those are the models. This one's not a model. This one is it's a painting of the wife of Prophet Aaron. Let's continue.
ده مين بقى يا باشا اللي قاعد على المنبر ده الإمام المهدي. النساء اللي قدام منه ولا واحدة متغطية ولا واحدة ملتزمة بشرع ربنا. طب مين ده؟ ما تعرفش. طب مين اللي مطلعه؟ برضه ما تعرفش. طب مين اللي اختاره مهدي؟ برضه ما تعرفش.
Okay, so then he says, look, there they are, all these women in front of him. None of them are abiding by the religion or the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says basically like, who is this guy? He's the Mahdi. Who is it? Who's appointed him? Who chose him? Nobody knows. Well, I mean, who chooses the Mahdi, Dr. Amr? Who chooses him? Is it not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that appoints his successor in the land? So anybody who's claiming to be the Mahdi, of course, they would be claiming that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who appointed them. And if he had paid attention to my speech, if he had read or investigated or took the time so that he doesn't look ignorant in front of all of his followers to know what it is that I'm saying that I came with a letter of appointment from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the night of his passing. I have the letter in which he said that I would come, and it has written in it my name, and it is the will of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which he said that after me there'll be 12 Imams, and after that there'll be 12 Mahdis, and the first of them, his name is Abdullah.
بسم الله الواحد القهار وصلى الله على محمد وآل محمد الأئمة والمهديين وسلم تسليما. قال الله: وإذا وقع القول عليهم أخرجنا لهم دابة من الأرض تكلمهم أن الناس كانوا بآياتنا لا يوقنون.
المشكلة انه بيستشهد بآية إذا وقع القول عليهم أخرجنا لهم دابة من الأرض تكلمهم. الآية دي نزلت في حق الجساسة. الجساسة دي من علامات أو من الآيات التي بين يدي الساعة. سيدنا النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أخبر إنه بين يدي الساعة دابة تكلم الناس، كائن حي هيكلم الناس، بل وهتختم الناس، ده مؤمن وده كافر. هو استشهد بإنه دابة دي هو المهدي يعني.
Okay, so then he takes the verse which I'm quoting in the very beginning of my speech, in which I say that if the word befalls them, we shall bring forward from the earth a beast or a creature that stomps, that walks, to speak to them, that verily the people did not believe in our signs. And he says that basically this guy's making a mistake. He's saying that this verse is about the Mahdi when it's not about the Mahdi. This is about the Jassasa, the spy. And he's referring to a hadith in which somebody said that while they were traveling, they landed on some island somewhere, and they had a face-to-face meeting with the Antichrist. And before they met the Antichrist, they were greeted by a creature that had long hair that was covering, its face, its body, everything. It was just a hairy creature, and the hairy creature was spying on behalf of the Antichrist, and it told the traveler that the Antichrist is waiting to speak to them. So this guy believes that there is a creature that's going to come. It's non-human. It's not clear whether he believes it to be some sort of monster-like beast or an orc like Lord of the Rings. It's not sure, but he believes that this creature is going to come forward in the end times, and it's going to be the one that marks the believers and marks the non-believers with its ring. But in actuality, as we know that Muhammad, the Prophet, said that the Mahdi would come from us and that he would be from the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam. And so naturally we should look at what the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam, not random companions, have said about the meanings of the verses, especially about the meanings of the verses that have to do with the Mahdi. And when we go to the words of the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam, we'll find that first off, it was the Prophet Muhammad who called Imam Ali salam the Dabba of the earth. So this is one of the titles of Imam Ali salam. And they also said that in every day and age that there is a Dabba that speaks to the people. And that is the Hujjah, the messenger from the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam. The Qaim also is known to have that title in many of the narrations of the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam. And he comes forward and he has with him the staff of Moses and he has the ring of Solomon, and it is with the staff of Moses and with the ring of Solomon that he stamps the foreheads and the noses of the believers and the non-believers, and he distinguishes between the two groups, and he has these relics of the prophets and the messengers because the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam are the inheritors of the prophets and the messengers, and it's known in the hadith that they're the ones that come forward and they have the belongings, these tools, these relics that were owned by them because they are caliphs of Allah, successors of Allah, and they're the ones that bring forward these relics, not some sort of beast from a cartoon or some sort of sci-fi movie.
خلاصة القول، ادي عندكم مهدي اجنبي حاطط صور نساء عرايا على الحيطة، والنساء قدام منه ولا واحدة منهم ملتزمة بشرع ربنا، بس هي مؤمنة ان الراجل الكيوتي اللذيذ ابو طاقية ده هو المهدي. وعندنا في العرب ما شاء الله في مهديين كتير، كل 15 يوم بيطلع لك مهدي، وممكن تفتح كيس الكاراتيه تلاقيه فيه مهدي طالع لك.
Okay, so there he goes again, in such a cheap fashion that's not worthy of any sort of scholarly discussion or debate. In comedic fashion, the man proceeds to once again go back to the point that he has already mentioned before, wasting the time of the viewers, saying that, oh, look, the women are not wearing hijab, and here he is, this sweet, cute Mahdi coming out who's a foreigner. And so basically the implication is what? Is that because he's a foreigner, he can't be the Mahdi. Even though there's nothing that states that is the case. There's no hadith that says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he chooses his successors, that they have to come as Arabs or speaking in the Arabic language. And he doesn't even know what my nationality is. In fact, my physical father is an Egyptian, and so therefore he would be considered in Arab, because Egyptians are considered to be Arabs, as are all of the people that live across North Africa and the Middle East. And the idea that he would use these things to attack the call without responding back to the theological, ideological arguments that I'm presenting is quite sad. Continue.
الضابط ايه يا جماعة؟ لازم نكون عندنا علم، لازم نتعلم علشان نعرف ما هي صفات المهدي ومتى يخرج، وما هي اللوازم اللي هتضطر الإمام المهدي يخرج. ما هياش لعبة يا جماعة. يعني مثلا الإمام المهدي سيدنا النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وصفه، قال خلقه كخلقي، يعني شكله فيه شبه من النبي محمد. ده أول وصف. الوصف الثاني إنه من أبناء الحسن ابن علي رضي الله عنه وأرضاه، يعني جده المباشر هو سيدنا النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم.
Okay, so then he proceeds to state that, we gotta be educated people. We just can't come out there and talk nonsense. He says that we have to know, and basically he's implying what, and he's stating what? That we have to know what it is that the Mahdi looks like in order that we may identify the Mahdi. And then he says that the Mahdi looks like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Well, how does he know that I don't look like the Prophet Muhammad? What is written about what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi looks like, so that he can make, or the viewers would be able to distinguish. For them, it's impermissible to even draw any paintings or pictures of the Prophet Muhammad. There was no cameras that existed at that time. So what is he even talking about? That doesn't make sense. This is one. Then the second point that he was that he was making was what? He says that the Mahdi comes and he's one of the sons of Imam al-Hassan, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there's two problems with this. Once again, he's making an assumption that I am not related to Imam al-Hassan. But what if I was related to Imam al-Hassan? What if does he know my family tree? Does he know if I'm a Sayyid or not a Sayyid, in order for him to make this declaration in front of his followers? And the more problematic thing than that is the fact that there are tons of narrations from the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam and from the companions of the prophets, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Imams that came after him, that all state that the Mahdi comes from the sons of Al-Hussein, not Imam al-Hassan. Let's continue.
فهل المهدي الأجنبي الكيوت ده، هل ده جده على طول سيدنا النبي؟ هل هو من أبناء الحسن؟ أبدا. هل الأخ اللي بيقول إن هو المهدي، الأخ العربي، هل جده هو سيدنا النبي محمد؟ لا. طب على أي أساس ادعيتم أنكم المهديين؟
Okay, so there again, he goes again. He says, this foreigner, this cute foreigner, which he keeps repeating, I really appreciate that he thinks that I'm cute. Wallah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'd rather be called cute than be called ugly. But is he expecting that the Mahdi be ugly? And why is he assuming that just because I'm speaking English that I'm a foreigner? And what is the problem with foreigners? I don't understand. What is this racism, this Arab, superiority complex that they have in regards to Islam, whereby they will cross out and automatically dismiss and assume that there are no people that speak other languages, that their lineage goes back to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and just because they're speaking English, that we should automatically dismiss everything that they have to say. He says, is this guy related to the Prophet? Absolutely not. Let's continue.
هذه مشكلة. الحاجة الثالثة والمهم إن المهدي نفسه ما يعرفش إن هو نفسه مهدي. دي أهم نقطة. الإمام المهدي الحقيقي ما يعرفش إن هو المهدي. عايش عادي زي الناس. الدليل إيه؟ قال رسول الله يصلحه الله في ليلة. يعني هو عادي خالص زي الناس، لكن يصلحه الله للمهدية والخلافة في ليلة، في ساعة. نايم بالليل صحي الصبح يكتشف إن هو ده المنوط به إنه يرفع الذل والأغلال عن هذه الأمة.
Okay, let's stop there. Then he says that, the third point, and this is the most important point, and that's the point that the Mahdi doesn't know that he is the Mahdi. He just wakes up one morning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fixes his affairs, fixes his matters, it's all fixed in 1 hour. He doesn't know he's the Mahdi, he goes to sleep, he wakes up, all of a sudden, he is the Mahdi. And this is a gross misinterpretation, misrepresentation, and basically just tahrif. It's corruption of an idea. There's no hadiths or narrations that state that the Mahdi doesn't know that he is the Mahdi. It's basically just that the Mahdi, God fixes his affair in an hour, and then there's another narration that states that he rejects a pledge of allegiance that some people are trying to make for him. But it doesn't state why it is that at that certain point in time he is rejecting that pledge of allegiance. In fact, why is it that the people are even attempting to pledge allegiance to him? Why is it that the people would follow him? Why is it that the people would go and risk their lives wanting to pledge allegiance to him in Mecca? Because that's what he believes, and he states further on, if the Mahdi did not have a da'wah in which he called the people to himself. In fact, the narrations about the Mahdi are explicitly clear They say that his example is, and his sunnah is the same sunnah as the prophets and the messengers that came before. So just as the Prophet Muhammad came to the people and he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that I am the Prophet of Allah, the Mahdi will come forward with the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad. He'll do the same thing, and he'll have a da'wah. In the beginning, it's a secret da'wah, and then it becomes a public da'wah. The hadiths are explicitly clear that he does as Joseph does. The people don't know him, just as the people didn't know Joseph until he is the one who tells them, I am the Mahdi. Just like Joseph, the brothers didn't know him until he told them, I am Joseph. And the Ahlul Bayt ﷺ stated, by Allah, this matter shall not be until he is the one who establishes the proof upon you and calls you to him.
الحاجة الرابعة والمهمة إن اسم الإمام المهدي نفس اسم النبي محمد. الواد الأجنبي ده اسمه مثلا جون ولا بيتر ولا.
So basically, then he says what? He says that the Mahdi, his name is the same name as the Prophet. He says, but this boy, he calls me, this foreigner boy, what's his name? John or Peter or something like that? He doesn't even know my name. My name is Abdullah. That's my birth name. Abdullah. Not John, not Peter. And even if it was John, or even if it was Peter, then it would be my honor and all the honor to carry a name like that. These are not names that belong to pagan people or were invented by them. These are Jewish names. These are names that belonged to the companions of the Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him. Peter was the name of the successor of the Prophet Jesus, and so he was a caliph of Allah. If that name was good enough for somebody that God chose for successorship, then why wouldn't it be good enough of a name for the Mahdi or for somebody who's a Muslim? And what about John? Is John not the name of a prophet like John the Baptist? But subhanAllah, on the brains and the ignorance of these non-working scholars.
الإمام المهدي النبي أخبر باسمه حتى قال اسمه كاسمي واسم أبيه كاسم أبي يعني اسمه محمد ابن عبد الله زي ما اسم النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم هو محمد ابن عبد الله.
Okay, so then he says the Prophet already said what his name is going to be. His name is going to be Muhammad. And it is Muhammad. That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I have been saying. I'm saying that I am a messenger from Imam al-Mahdi whose name is Muhammad. Muhammad, the 12th Imam that's mentioned in the will of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whose name is the same name as the Prophet. And I'm also saying that my name is mentioned in the will of the Prophet because after Imam al-Mahdi, Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Askari alayhi salam, there comes 12 Mahdis. The first of them is a man who also, his name is the name of the Prophet. His name is Ahmad, son of Ismail. And the hadith says that he has a name that's like my name, and his father's name is like my father's name. The Prophet Muhammad says, I am the son of the two slaughtered ones. And so this hadith, which is talking about a Mahdi that's born in the end times, that didn't know who he was and discovered who he was, and who has a name, and his name and his father's name are the likeness of the Prophet Muhammad's name and the Prophet Muhammad's father's name. The Prophet Muhammad's father's name is Abdullah, and the Prophet Muhammad's name is Muhammad. The Prophet Muhammad says, I am the son of the two slaughtered ones, meaning Abdullah, because he was offered by Abdul Muttalib as a sacrifice, just in the same way as the Prophet Muhammad is the great-grandson of Ismail, the son of Abraham, who was also offered by Abraham as a sacrifice. And so Ismail and Abdullah become two fathers of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So a name like the name of the Prophet is not a name that's exactly the name of the Prophet. A name like the name of the Prophet Muhammad is Ahmad, and a name like the name of the father of the Prophet Muhammad, Abdullah, is Ismail, and we have the first Mahdi, whose name is Ahmad, son of Ismail. The narrations that describe the Mahdi, they are so many and they contradict with one another. Some of them say the Mahdi is tall, some of them say he's shorter, some of them say he has the appearance of an Israelite man, or a person from the Romans, or wears the clothing of the Romans, or is white-skinned. Another one will say that he is dark-skinned and the son of a black woman, and so the descriptions, they differ with one another because the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam are speaking about multiple people. They're describing Imam al-Mahdi, and they're also describing the Mahdis that come after that. And so there's no contradiction here in this dawah, and the point that he's making is totally invalid, and he doesn't even know what he's talking about because he thought that my name was John or Peter. Let's continue.
طب متى يخرج المهدي؟ وفين هيعيش المهدي؟ وفين هيخرج؟ أول حاجة المهدي هيكون عايش في المدينة، ده واحد منهم عايش في أوروبا والتاني يمكن عايش في مدينة تانية. المهدي لازم يكون عايش في مدينة النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، قضى فيها حياته. طيب إيه سبب خروج المهدي؟ سيدنا النبي قال: يملأ الأرض عدلا كما ملئت جورا وظلما. لما تضيق الدنيا بالمسلمين وتمتلئ الأرض عليهم ظلم، ربنا هيطلع لهم شعاع النور ده علشان ينقذهم من الظلم الذي وقع عليهم. طيب هيخرج فين المهدي؟ هل هيخرج في مثلا باريس، في واشنطن؟ الإمام المهدي هيخرج عند الكعبة ويبايع عند الكعبة.
Okay, so now he's confusing everybody. He's saying the Prophet Muhammad, he lived in Medina, Mecca, so therefore the Mahdi has to live in these areas. There's nothing that says that that's the case at all. There's no narration. He's just making up stuff now. Totally making it up. The fact that he appears at some point in Mecca, Medina does not mean that he was raised or has lived or comes from those two towns or is a native of Mecca or Medina. And then it says, and he's supposed to pop up from those areas. He's not supposed to pop up from the west. But the narrations from the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam actually state that he does pop up from the west. That his dawah starts from the west. That it doesn't. He says it starts in the west and it ends in the east. And not that it would start in the Middle East in one of those two countries. And so he's totally confusing people. Then he says, and when does he come out? The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that he comes out when the whole earth is filled with injustice and tyranny. So when the lands of the Muslims, everybody's oppressing them and it's in a state of tyranny and oppression, then that's when the Mahdi comes out, not now. And so if he doesn't come out now, then when is it that he wants him to come out? Is this guy living on a different planet? Does he not see what has been happening over the past couple decades in the lands of the Muslims? Has he not seen the wars that have taken place in Syria and in Sudan, and the one that's currently taking place in Palestine, and the one that's taking place in Libya? Does he not see the Arab Spring? Did he not see the Arab Spring and the fact that all of the Arabs and the Muslims in those lands were uprising against the rulers, and they were saying enough is enough and burning down buildings and throwing away, toppling their leaders because of the fact that they have been so oppressed? Did he not see how ISIS swept through Iraq and through Syria, and the mass killings and terrorism that they committed in the name of religion? Was he not aware of the Iraq war that took place and the aftermath and the millions of Iraqis that were killed? If this is not oppression and tyranny that is engulfed the entire region, then what is? What about the war that took place in Afghanistan? Does he not see the millions of Muslims that have been displaced and forced to leave the Muslim lands and become asylum seekers all over the world? Did they not see how the Syrian people and the Iraqi people were scattered like the Israelites were scattered when they were forced out of Jerusalem after the Roman invasion, after the Babylonian invasion that happened before? This guy, does he not see that we are on the doors of a third world war? Does he not see NATO and America at war with Russia in Ukraine? Nuclear powers threatening one another every other day that they're going to blow up the planet. Does he not see the volcanoes that are erupting every other day and the earthquakes that are shattering towns and wiping them off of the map? Does he not see the hurricanes that are striking and the diseases and the plagues that are making the entire globe stand still, and the economy that's getting ready to collapse, and the poverty and the oppression and the starvation that are at all-time highs? Does he not see that the scientists of the world are begging and crying and issuing warnings, hoping that somebody will hear them, stating that if we don't change the planet right now, if we don't try to save the planet right now, that we won't have a planet anymore? Does he not see the kings and the queens, like the king of the United Kingdom that was just giving a speech not too long ago, stating that the planet, if we don't do something now, it's not going to be there. It's not going to be the same for the generation to come, for our children and for our children's children. If the Mahdi is not supposed to come now, then when is it that he is supposed to come? Let's continue.
النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أخبر أنه يبايع عند الكعبة، وقال في الحديث يغزو جيش الكعبة، في جيش من المسلمين من العرب هيطلع بنية غزو الكعبة. ليه؟ لأن المهدي ظهر عندها ويأخذ البيعة من الناس، فالجيش ده رايح علشان يسكت الموضوع ده، ما يعرفش إن هو ده المهدي الحقيقي. قال يغزو جيش الكعبة، فإذا كانوا ببيداء من الأرض خسف بأولهم وآخرهم، هيخسف بهذا الجيش. الخسف بهذا الجيش هتكون أكبر علامة ودلالة على إن هذا الذي يبايع عند الكعبة هو المهدي المنتظر الحقيقي، فعندئذ سيلحق به جميع أهل الإسلام، وهيبدأ ياخد جيش المسلمين ومباشرة يروح على بلاد الشام، وهيجتمع بالناس في بلاد الشام، وهيكون معقد اللواءات الإسلامية هناك في بلاد الشام، وهو يصلي بالناس في بلاد الشام صلاة الفجر. هينزل سيدنا المسيح فهيرجع له المهدي علشان يخليه يصلي بالناس، فالمسيح ساعتها هيقول صل أنت بالناس تكرمة الله لكم يا أمة محمد، فساعتها الإمام المهدي هيصلي حتى بالمسيح.
Okay, so then this guy basically states and is telling his followers and everybody that they should just sit tight and wait for the main sign to take place. And for him, the main sign is that when the Mahdi is asking people for a pledge of allegiance in Mecca, that there's an army that will go forward to attack him and to control the situation, and that this army belongs to an Arab nation. And as they're on their way to go over there, that the earth will swallow them up. And he says that this will be the sign of all signs, and this will be the point that will know that he's the Mahdi, and then everybody's going to join him, and he's going to take everybody. He's going to make his headquarters in the Sham region, which consists of Syria, Palestine, Jordan, that region over there. And then he says that that's when Jesus, the son of Mary, is going to come down, and it's as if he's telling his followers that, like, now you guys should wait for that. And that's when we'll know when the Mahdi is a Mahdi. When this army comes out and gets swallowed by the earth, why would an army go out against the Mahdi unless he had an army himself? If it was just a matter of a guy taking pledges of allegiance from people, you'd think that the army in Arabia itself would be sufficient, or the police force over there would be sufficient to control the situation. Armies only come out to fight against other armies. And if he does have an army, if he does have that many supporters that have pledged allegiance to him to the point that it requires an Arab army to come out and go against him, then why should we wait for that event to take place when all of the best of the believers would have been the first ones to pledge allegiance to him and to support him, not all those who come after that. And certainly not like after Jesus, the son of Mary, descends from the heavens to pray behind him. Let's continue.
لكن اللي عايز اقوله مش اي واحد يشوف رؤيه في المنام، مش اي حد الناس تقول له ده انا شفت ان انت المهدي يطلع يفكر نفسه ان المهدي. المهدي له اسم معين، له نسب معين، هيعيش في مكان معين، هيطلع عند مكان معين، وفي ظروف معينه لازم تتوفر لخروج الامام المهدي. اسال الله سبحانه وتعالى ان يتقبل منا ومنكم صالح الاعمال، والسلام عليكم ورحمه الله.
And then he says, not anybody who sees a dream thinks that he's the Mahdi. Not anybody who just comes out and pops out of nowhere and believes that he's the Mahdi, we should believe him. It's not the case. And then he prays for guidance for everybody. We're not asking people that they should do that. And I totally agree with him that not anybody who claims that they were appointed in a dream or that makes a claim that I am the Mahdi should be followed. The only person who should be followed and pledged allegiance to is an infallible Imam, is the Imam of the time. That is who it is obligatory to follow. Who is this man's Imam of the time? Who has Dr. Amr pledged allegiance to? When he believes in the narration that states that whoever dies and doesn't pledge allegiance to the Imam of his time has died the death of ignorance. So who does he believe is the Imam of the time of this particular day and age? If he hasn't pledged allegiance to somebody, then he, by his own narrations that he confesses and professes to believe in, is going to die the death of ignorance. We believe that for every time, for every day, for every age, God's Spirit is present, and it's present in a divinely appointed caliph, and that this is the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the time of Adam all the way till now. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away. He dictated in his will that he wanted to write on the Thursday before his death, but he was prevented from doing so by some companions of his that wanted to usurp the caliphate after him and prevent its rightful heirs to come forward. And this is known and it's mentioned in a narration called The Tragedy of Thursday, and he can look it up himself and make a video about it if he would like to. And in that will that the Prophet wrote, which is preserved, it's only one copy of the will and it's preserved by the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, and it is in the books of the Muslims. It narrates on there that the Prophet dictates to Salman and to Imam Ali and to Abu Darr and to Al-Miqdad the names of the inheritors, the heirs, the people that he's going to appoint after him. And he mentions that the first of them is Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, and then he goes through and he mentions Imam after Imam after Imam. And each one of these Imams were oppressed by the so-called Muslim rulers of their time. And so the Prophet appoints Imam Ali, but the nation chooses Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman. And then when Imam Ali alayhi salam becomes finally the caliph of the Muslims, he's killed, he's fought by Muawiyah lanatullah alayh, and then Al-Hasan is prevented from becoming the heir of the Muslims. And then he's poisoned. And then Imam al-Hussein, who's mentioned in the will of the Prophet Muhammad, is slaughtered by the son of Muawiyah, Yazid. And so they abandon the heirs of the Prophet Muhammad. They abandon the will of the Prophet Muhammad, and they follow a different family, the family of Abu Sufyan, the family of the Bani Umayyah, the same family that spent half of the life of the Prophet Muhammad fighting against him before they were forced to accept Islam. And then after his death, they all fought against the heirs and the family of the Prophet Muhammad, the same family that the Prophet Muhammad says, or God told him in the Quran to say, that I don't ask from you any sort of payment for all that he's done for the nation of Islam, but rather only that they love those who are his family. And then each and every one of the Imams that are mentioned in the will, they are murdered, they're killed until the time of Imam al-Mahdi. And that is this time now. Imam al-Mahdi, Muhammad, son of al-Hasan al-Askari alayhi salam, the 12th Imam, Baqiyatullah, he is the Imam of the time in which it is obligatory for every Muslim to pledge allegiance to. If we don't pledge allegiance to him, then we don't have a pledge of allegiance in our neck to the Imam of the time, and thus we die the death of ignorance. He is all of religion, and he sent forward messengers in this day and age. Those messengers that he sent forward to call towards the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the supremacy of God are also, they have the title of being Mahdis, meaning followers of Imam al-Mahdi, and they are the inheritors of Imam al-Mahdi that are mentioned in his will. And the name of the first three is Abdullah, Ahmad, and al-Mahdi. The first Mahdi is called Ahmad al-Hasan, Ahmad son of Ismail. And Ahmad al-Hasan alayhi salam was sent forward, and he proclaimed the da'wah in 1999, and he warned the nation. They rejected him, they attempted to kill him, they attempted to imprison him, they slaughtered his followers, and they turned their back and they rejected him, and they told him to go back from where he came, that they have no need for him. And so Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam is sent forward, the second of the Mahdis that are mentioned in the will of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abdullah, and I have been proclaiming this message in English to those who have yet to hear it. And that's why I'm speaking in the English language, because Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam has come and sends messengers to all tribes and all peoples, not just to the Arabs. And in fact, it is mentioned in the narrations that it is the Arabs that will fight against the Mahdi more viciously than anybody else. And that the Mahdi will have no more clear enemy than the scholars specifically, and that the enemies, that there remains nothing between the Mahdi and between the Arabs and the Persians except for the sword. And that the narrations state that most of the companions of the Mahdi, of the Qaim, are non-Arabs. And other narrations state that it is the non-Arabs that will be setting up tents in Kufa and in Iraq and in other countries, and they will be teaching the Arabs how the Quran actually came down and teaching them religion from anew, because the Arabs did exactly like the Israelites did, in the sense that they killed their prophets and their messengers, the caliphs that were appointed by God. When the Jews, they killed John the Baptist, and they sought to kill Jesus, son of Mary, and crucify him, and they stoned Zechariah, and they did all of the filthy things that they did to the caliphs of Allah. The same thing happens here. The Muslims, they followed in their footsteps, step by step, as to follow them even into the lizard's hole. And the prophecies of the Prophet came true, and they became apostates of Islam, and they broke the covenant with God, and they lost everything, and none of their apparent works is worth anything anymore if they don't have the wilayah of the household of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so they lost, they broke the covenant, they became no longer God's chosen people or chosen nation, and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's mission in this day and age continues with the declaration of the Mahdis and calling the people of all of the different nations to come forward and pledge allegiance to Muhammad ibn Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam. And just as the prophecy stated, just as the Prophet Muhammad stated, the majority of those who would respond to this call are the people that speak English, the people that speak German, the people that speak French, the people that speak Spanish, the people that speak Urdu and Punjabi and all of the different languages and tongues that are on the planet, except for the Arabic tongue, as you can see from this guy who dismisses a message without investigation and in total contradiction to the commandment of God that says, "Oh, you who believe, if there comes to you a person with a news, then investigate, lest you hurt somebody." Even if it's an immoral or lewd person, even if it's somebody who's known for immorality or has a bad reputation, people are required by God to investigate the claim of everybody who has come forward, because all of the prophets and the messengers that came forward before have all been slandered, and accusations and lies have been told about them. Even the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, lies have been told about him. And he was accused of being a magician and a liar and everything else in the book, and the same thing for Jesus and everybody else. And so the same sunnah will continue with Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. In fact, the narrations state that the Mahdi will face a harder time than the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam because of creatures like this that come out and they confuse the masses and they lie and they deceive in order that they gain some cheap views on YouTube or basically gain some praises in the eyes of their followers. They know nothing about Islam, and Islam is innocent of them. And Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, and Lanatullah ala Zalimeen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala curse the oppressors, and until next episode, inshallah. Thank you so much, Ali Muhammad, for joining me.
Thank you, Father.